2016. It's our fourth day. We have our closing event of World Museum this evening. We hope to see many of you there. Welcome to the APJ Kolkata Literary Festival held in association with the Times of India. The session today is Flavours of Culture. We begin with the release of celebrated chef Christine Manfield's A Personal Guide to India and Bhutan by Flavours. This will be followed by a conversation with the author, Park Chef Sharad Diwan and Nandan Bachi. A very brief introduction. Christine Manfield is a highly regarded Australian chef, author, food and travel writer, food manufacturer, presenter, teacher, and gastronomic traveler. She currently runs Universal Restaurant in Sydney, in the Sydney suburb of Darlinghurst. Veer Sangvi is one of the leading journalists of Indian media whose career has spanned over both print and television journalism. He was the editor of the Hindustan Times and continues to be a regular columnist for it, as well as occasionally for the Mint and other papers. He has anchored numerous shows on Star Network as well as NDTV Network. Sharad Diwan is the director, food production for the park. He is also the executive chef for the park. Nandan Bachi dons many creative hats, which includes being the drummer of the popular band Hip Pocket, acting in films like Tata vs. Tata, Ranjana Ami, Ashwaram, and many others. I'm very sorry for my pronunciation, as well as a popular food columnist. And I don't have to tell you that Nandan and Park are synonymous, so that's how I know him quite well. Thank you, and without further ado, may I ask you to steer this session.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I don't think Mike is working.
Not yet.
Yeah. I have really bad, still working over. I have really bad luck. Hello, is this one? Yes, it's working. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the session. I'll tell you a bit about how we're going to do this. The first part of the session apparently is my releasing the book. Now, my book was released yesterday by Ashish Nandi, and he was very awkward doing it, and so am I, because I'm never quite sure how you release a book. It's not like a cage parrot that you open the door and it flies out. So, as far as I can gather, this will consist of my ripping off the wrapping and showing you the book. Now, a little bit about Christine. I know Christine's food because I went to the restaurant in Sydney, and there is a tradition of Australians understanding Pacific Rim cuisine. Even Thai food, people like David Thompson have done so much for Thai cuisine. But what blew me away about Christine and the food at the restaurant was the absolute range she had in her cuisine and her mastery of Asian flavors from all over. She then came and joined us, I'm not sure if you remember us, at our table, and we talked about India. I know what Indians are like when foreigners come and say they've been to India. We're always sort of encouraging but vaguely condescending. And this lasted like 5 minutes for me because I soon realized you probably knew more about India than I did. And then the book arrived yesterday and I pulled it out and I read it again. I have to say honestly, with that little degree of condescension, saying, is this another Lonely Planet backpackers kind of book? And she's done it. If you have, as you probably see when you buy it, and she signs it for you, you'll probably see it's being done by destination. And I wondered what restaurants, what hotels would she pick at each destination. And she picked every single good restaurant I know in every city she's written about, and many I didn't know about. I doubt very much if any Indian has done a book like this, and it's really a great pleasure to read it. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. As for the rest of the panel, what we will do is once I've released the cage, panic, so to speak, we will talk to Christine. Sharad Diwan, who at the park you already know, is an exceptional chef at this hotel, who's been feeding me amazing food for the last 2 days. wonderful Thai food, the best Thai food in Calcutta by miles. And interestingly, food that I don't know much about, but Christine does excellent Bhutanese food. Norman Bakshi, you just heard the introduction of, is a multifaceted person, musician, food writer. I think I embarrassed him greatly just before the session by telling him that I've been a fan of his since his JS days. I mean, PD does not remember, and I actually quoted pieces he'd done on people like Roger Dorian. Most of you are probably too young to remember the 70s, or not even born in the 70s, but the 70s rock music seemed a long, long way away. And to have somebody in India who wrote about it so intelligently and so perceptively used to thrill all of us. So thank you. Thank you for contributing to all of our education. Okay, so now I am going to release the book. Ceremony. Are you ready? When you're ready, I won't do it 3 times. Yes? Yes. Yes, all right. 1, 2, 3, here goes. There it is. Okay. This one, we should all have copies of the book. Oh, it's wrong. Sorry. That's you. People on the right, you got it? Great. Still more. Thank you. Thank you. Now that's out of the way, let's go get into the discussion. I want to start, Christine, by asking you, how in God's name do you know India so well?
I think, well, all my friends told me I was born with a bindi on my head.
I can believe that.
I've been traveling to India for the last 20 years. I came here in the mid-90s to Chennai, actually, at the invitation of the government to be a guest chef in residence for a couple of weeks at the Taj Coronado. And I guess the love affair started there with the country, and I've been back ever since.
How often have you been there?
I've lost count. I come about 3 times a year. So
3 times a year, yeah. Since the 90s?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't lost count too. Yeah.
I bring people traveling twice a year as well, small groups, and we do the, gastronomic sort of adventures around the country.
Since you've seen India develop in cuisine terms, what do you think are the most significant changes?
Well, there's definitely been I think street food is perennial.
Yes.
It's just there. It's a staple. It's been there forever. But there's been a real development, I think, in restaurants and standalone restaurants. 20 years ago, there was only restaurants in hotels, whereas now there's a lot of chefs that are opening outside of personal precincts. So that's on the restaurant side. I think there's more of an acceptance by people from outside of India of the sophistication of the food culture and a willingness to come and try for themselves. It's sort of really, and I think using food as one of the sort of tools for attracting people is really important. That whole sort of sense of culinary tourism. It really engages. You engage with people, and you really get to understand what the culture is all about through its food.
Yeah, well, it's interesting coming from an Australian, because for most Indians, when we think of Australia, we think of the food. After MasterChef, after all the things.
What did you do before MasterChef? God.
We look to the West, yeah. Now we look to Australia. Now, how do you think in the last 10 or 15 years the Indian food scene has changed?
Well, I think. Sorry. You go first.
All right.
Let me defer to you.
I think I would agree to a great extent with what Christine said, and it has a lot to do with every piece of the jigsaw that is life. Indians, we travel a huge lot more than we did 30 years ago. entire families go to the Far East, they go to Europe, they go to America just for holidays and discover many things about food, which is an essential commodity. You have to wake up in the morning and think, what am I going to eat? And sometimes you won't have idlis, and you won't have what you're used to. So that's a huge factor. It comes under a word known as globalization, call it internet, call it TV, call it mobile phones, call it anything you want. But increasingly, humanity is thankfully becoming a single community with fewer and fewer demarcations and divisions. As a result,
in terms, and this is here I'm talking sort of about the chefs, because generally sort of a significant shift in in a modern context with contemporary cuisine, wherever it is chef-led. It's not led by home cooks. India is incredibly fortunate to have a very long history and great heritage of the most brilliant home cooks on the planet. I mean, you talk to any Indian and their favourite chef is their mother. And, you know, Australia, conversely, is quite a young country. We've only been, you know, with white settlement, you know, a couple of 250 years, so it's really nothing. And we're only just starting to recognise the Indigenous and the importance of our Indigenous culture and its food traditions. I mean, now, like you said, it's only just unfolding as we speak. So it's sort of very different. And I think while the chefs in India are, like everywhere else on the planet, experimenting and doing a whole lot of different range of things of how they fuse elements together, flavours, and also playing with the techniques of how you do food preparation, which you don't do in a home. That's one thing. And then, you know, and then you've got others that are sort of keeping it sort of more traditional. But I think what you really need to hold, you know, and it's not for me to preach, but what's really important, I think, is that all the rich cultures around the world that have a very long history of fantastic regional diversity, you really need to cherish and hold on to that and nourish it, not let it fall by the wayside for this, you know, sort of globalization. It's great to have that as an option, but don't let it steamroll and take over. Like in, if I can use an example, in Thailand at the moment, most of the younger generation now don't eat traditional food. They sort of pricing sort of bad, sort of, mass manufactured, industrialized Western food with things like tomato ketchup has taken over managing. And it's a tragedy, and because the things that sort of, that culture is passed down verbally, if it's not continuing, it's going to come, so it's really important that all that stuff gets documented.
Okay. We've talked about
I just wanted to interject for a moment, and because you said 10 years, 15 years, how have you observed? And I was saying, on a positive side, that this is what I have observed, but not for a moment was I saying that I can live or breathe without a footstep.
No, yeah, we got that. Nobody's suggesting that you said you want the whole world to be covered.
No, definitely not. We need to preserve the fact that in Bengal itself, there are 32 kinds of edible spinach, which are still being sold. Just about a year and a half ago, I went into a market with a journalist from BBC4, radio journalist, not a TV journalist, and it wasn't even the season, it wasn't the monsoon, it was April, and we counted 23 different kinds of fish, many of which were live. He was astonished. And that keeps going on, and it will go on forever, I hope. But opening our hearts and our taste buds and our doors to the good stuff that any part of the world has to offer is also a huge plus point.
Okay, let me make sure. We've had enough about globalization. I'll pick up on something as Christine said. She said that in much of the world, cuisine in restaurants is chef-led. In that if you went into a great Michelin 3-star restaurant in France and the guy served you coq au vin or dishes that his grandmother had made, you would probably take away his stuff. Is it a problem in India that when you do Indian food, it's not that much chef-led? You have to just recreate dishes that others make.
Partly right. I think that's a statement I would have made probably 5 years or 10 years back. I think things are changing now. People are standing up to the food that they create. It's very sad actually that Indian food is perhaps one of the finest cuisines. It is one cuisine which has got one of the oldest records.
Yeah.
If you look back, it is in fact one of the most scientific cuisine. If you pick up the Vedas, every dish that was created had a reason behind it. And the reason was taste, of course, but it also had medicinal reason. It had reasons for longevity of life. It had reasons for fighting the disease of that particular time. But what has happened over a period of time, we started bastardizing our cuisine.
Give me an example.
A simple thing, let's say like a salad, let's talk about beef.
Yeah, all right. The 23 kinds of food.
At that point of time, when actually in Bengal, that's a story for one of the newspapers. In totality, only around there are 103 types of beans which were in Bengal.
How many?
103 types of
all right, okay.
If you count all the 12 months.
All right.
So such an interesting thing, but if you could find only probably around 32 varieties. If you go to outskirts, you probably get around 40 varieties out there. And what has happened is that when I was a child, I used to get apples only in winter. I used to get oranges only at particular 2 months in a year. Right now, I get everything all winter round. Now, our Vedas say, eat the fruit of the season. And when I say the food of the season, it means fruits, vegetables, fish, meat, everything of the season. But we eat everything out all the year round now. Does that fruit, which is not of the season, give us the same, or we're just satisfying our souls? Okay, I ate papaya.
So what is an apple that you don't eat in season as tasty as an apple you would eat in season?
Perhaps not.
But do we care? My point is that we don't seem to care.
We don't see that. That is exactly my point.
And that's a lot of problem.
That's part of the problem.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
this is the planned homogenization of flavors.
That's one problem.
Yeah, go on.
So same has happened about the dishes that we used to cook. The amount of, when you talk about Indian cuisine, globally, if I ask anybody, everybody, the first saying Indian cuisine means masalas.
Right.
Now, if you pick up any ancient recipe, you will not get in very few recipes which were only served during the royal, when the royal feast was there, the spices were more than 5 or 6.
Right.
Otherwise, the spices were limited to 2 or 3 in any particular dish. And every dish was cooked in a particular fashion which was scientific, so that the good part, the good soul of that particular dish is not lost in the air or not killed by overcooking.
Right.
Everything was taken care of, which we stopped doing. But having said that, why I say the cooking is coming back to be chef-led now in India, and is that revival of that ancient cooking has started happening. And I think it's a matter of time, when 5 years or 6 years, I think what Indian cooking really is all about, we will come back to the forefront.
Okay. I'm not that optimistic, but on the subject of globalization, while I agree that if globalization means mass-produced industrial food, franchise, so that everywhere in the world is a McDonald's or a Kentucky Fried Chicken, I'm bitterly opposed to it as much as I think anybody here is. I also think we need to remember that yes, there are principles of Ayurvedic cooking, principles of cooking in the Vedas, but Indian food is essentially a globalized cuisine. Everybody in Calcutta is proud of biryani. But biryani only starts appearing in the Middle Ages in India after the pulao comes in through Muslim traders and later through Muslim kings. We cannot imagine Indian food without the potato, Indian food without khichdi, for instance. Yet neither of these ingredients was available in India till the Europeans came and brought new world flavors. Everywhere you go in Punjab, somebody, when we talk about salt, will tell you that makki ki roti is a traditional Punjabi dish. Well, guess what? It's not. It's the British who began planting corn in the Punjab. It's not a centuries old dish. So, in a sense, one of the strengths of Indian cuisine is that we absorb global influences and we try and incorporate them so that they become part of Indian food. Is that right?
I think that happens in every country.
In every country. So yes, there is a kind of globalization that's very distressing. But I agree with that. In a sense, there's a kind of globalization that's also very encouraging because we learn about it. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's not about quantity. It's about quality. And if I know that there is a place down the road where I can where I can get where I can get something that maybe I had in some other part of the world, but it tastes very close. I'm not saying I can get it in 7 different places, but if I can get it in 1 or 2, that means that the sharing of our cultures is on a decent footing. Not for a moment did I suggest that we should, or any part of the world should lose their tradition and culture. For example, as Dean was saying, or rather Sharad was saying, about the Vedas, if we go into a study of tea in China and Japan, there's one kind of tea for practically any kind of human condition. So we don't want to disturb that. And we want it to continue. But what we also want to do is to have people like Madam Mansfield in our midst, who has probably gone down every lane of every small town and city that she has visited in our part of the world, and who has had the savvy and the open-mindedness to welcome it, understand it, and make her own Lonely Planet book. Where to eat, where to sleep, what we'll get.
Planet maybe, but not lonely.
Well, we won't let it be lonely.
Alright, I just want to take up one more point Christine has said. She's talked about chef-led restaurant. I always find one of the interesting contrasts, and it's slightly controversial, between modern Australian food and Indian food, is that modern Australian food focuses to a great extent on very high quality ingredients. It then takes influences from all over the world and cooks them in different ways. Indian food, I find, often just retells the same story again and again. It takes fairly mediocre ingredients because chefs are not that ingredient conscious and does the same recipes again and again. Defend yourself.
No, I'm not defending. I sort of agree with you. That is the reason why I said.
That's why I just contrast to what you said.
It is the chefs who are to be blamed for bastardizing our beautiful cuisine. You can't.
Except yourself.
No, I might be one of those who might have done at my younger age.
But you see the light.
But I've seen the light, and I'm proud to be one of those who's trying to get things right and get back into our traditions, get the real food out.
Let me just interrupt, Sharad. It was Mr. Sharad Diwan who told me, if you want the right flavor of this particular Punjabi dish, you have to use a wok, a kadai, made of iron, black in color. You can't use a common or garden normal steel wok. You have to do it in a black iron wok. So I bought one on his advice, went home, and I have never made that particular dish or many other closely related Punjabi dishes without using that black wok.
Okay. Great. So now he's defended you, so you don't have to defend yourself. So you can continue.
I'm preaching right.
Yeah, you're doing something right. Okay, so but the other one, which is apart from ingredients, is that aren't Indian chefs awkward about inventing new dishes, creating something different? I have seen so many traditional chefs, when you say that you're just been making Rogan Josh for 40 years, don't you ever want to make something different? Say contemptuously, that is fusion, whatever that means. Or confusion, they say contemptuously, and I don't do that. Isn't there a sort of frog and well attitude?
Yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. And again, I look back into traditions. It was the Indian kitchen which had a separate cook for every separate job. Okay, French came and put the saucier and all the other things, but it was the Indian kitchen which had a masala who would do nothing but the masalas. It would have a guy who would do nothing, and masalas also, they were two separate. There was one who would do only the wet masalas and one person who would do only the dry masalas. Then there was one person dedicated who would cut only vegetables.
And we were doing this long before the French invented sauces.
No, we were doing a long time back, much longer. So what we are trying to do is not to reinvent, we're just trying to rediscover. Yes, the youngsters today are actually not, they actually are on a fast forward track. They want to become chefs in 5 years, they want to become masters in 10 years, they want to open their own restaurant at the 11th year and try to confuse everyone, not with their fusion dishes. And that's the sad part. But I think it's senior chefs like me around India who have to take the lead now and hand over these youngsters and settle them.
Christine, I noticed in your book you praised lots of traditional street food places, but you've also praised Manish Mehrotra and people who are doing different things. So where do you think Indian food is headed?
Well, I think they're two different elements, and they're both equally important in your food culture. As I said earlier, the street food is it's a constant. You don't expect sort of changes where someone goes out and they cook the same thing every day, and that's what you go for. You go to that vendor to have whatever it is. And then at home, you've got the home cook has the repertoire of dishes which are really a backbone of your culinary history, and that changes not just regionally but also in each particular city, even depending on your religion, your caste, etc. And what you've got available to you, and your commentary about seasonality is so spot on. That we all need to be mindful of celebrating the seasons, and that and there's sort of blurring the line between them, and just having everything available to us all year. It's a real curse in a way, and it's that expectation. It's that real middle class expectation of demanding and wanting everything all the time, and it just sort of then diminishes the value of it and the importance of it, and it takes away some of those other traditions around why the feeds happen at a certain time of the year.
This is why I think you've done your book, your lesson book, as different seasons.
Yeah.
And in my hotel, I change my menu not traditionally like everybody does twice a year. I do it 4 times.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if any of you eaten the Bhutanese food or the Thai food at this hotel. He's so specific about the different chilies. He will make Bhutanese food only with Bhutanese chilies. So most of us will make it with the local chili because you recommend making them.
Absolutely.
Alright, I think we have like 15 minutes before we leave in Christine's station, because she's doing another session. Anybody from the audience wants to come and ask us anything, we're open. The lady there, I don't know if we give you a microphone, and if we do give you one, I'm not sure it will work. We'll try it. Alright, we'll try it. You have the chef's mic.
Thank you, sir.
You have to identify yourself, tell us who you are.
I'm Mrs.
Okay.
And thank you so much for daytime presence. Thanks to you, I learned my caramel ice cream and the honeycomb, and that was it. I couldn't do anymore. It was one of the most difficult things I've made in my entire life, and I just did 2 parts of it. Anyway, but I have one question for you, which I personally think is something that a lot of people in the audience will agree with. I don't think Indian food is truly Indian, it's regional. And sometimes it just changes when it goes from one neighborhood to the other. Right, so given that, if I'm asking you what exactly is your definition of Indian food, then I think it's very difficult for you as well as me to exactly explain what Indian food is. Again, setting the parameter there.
Is there a question in there?
Setting the parameter there.
Let's see the question.
Now my question is, now what do you think should change if Indian food is going towards globalization, as we just said? There's so many things changing. What do you think should all Indian chefs focus on specifically, which they aren't so far, and represent India to the globe?
Okay.
Yeah,
You got the question,
there's
yeah.
lots of questions in
All
there.
right, yeah. We focus on the last one, which is that though Indian food is difficult to define and Indian food is changing, if we are going to take Indian food abroad and present it to the world, what's the way ahead? I mean, that's the question.
I think part of the reason I wrote this was for the world audience, the global audience, and particularly people that are travelling to India, whether it's their first time or 100th time, is that very point. Indian food can't be, it's not a one-dimensional thing. It's not made up of, the 4 popular dishes that are known around the world. You ask anyone, they think Indian food, the sum total of it is you know, maybe a paratha, a naan, a vindaloo, butter chicken, and you know, Rogan Josh, you know, not
Tandoori chicken, that's it.
and it's those two dishes, just like you know, and it misses all the subtext and what really does make up. So I don't think you can say Indian food equals as just one thing. I think that it's huge, and as you say, it changes neighbourhood by neighbourhood. So what I tried to do with both the books, this one being sort of a guide of where to eat and what to expect when you go there, what dishes you will find, just to show the breadth and the depth of the culinary sort of repertoire in India, and how incredibly versatile it is. And then Tasting India, the one that came out 4 years ago now, is the recipe. Same sort of thing. I spent a lot of time travelling around the whole country across, you know, many visits in the 5 years I was researching it, and getting recipes from people and street vendors and home cooks and culinary instructors, etc. And so they're all the recipes that are in here. None of the recipes in, for those that haven't seen Tasting India. None of the recipes in there are mine. It's not my interpretation of what Indian food is. What I do then with the sort of the flavours and techniques is something else again. But these are sort of to give a very sort of broad picture of what to expect when you come here. And to answer the second part of your question, I don't think you can expect all the chefs to be doing the same thing or singing off the same page. No one does that anywhere, you know. And you've just got to leave that sort of open-ended. There's those that are going to champion the very sort of essence of what traditional Indian food is. There are those that are going to go off on a limb and do something totally experimental. Some of it may work in the case of Manish at India and his younger chefs that he's mentored who have opened in the Soul Library in Mumbai. Just as a couple of examples, and then you've got someone who's very scholarly and knowledgeable about the food of the South with Solomon at Dakshin in Chennai.
Praveen Anand.
Sorry. Yeah, the other one's from Mumbai. Sorry, I've got their names mixed up. And also we've got Sharad doing and really sort of exploring, I guess, the culinary roots of the country. So, you know, you've got to expect a real mixed bag. I don't think you can sort of streamline chefs or anyone into one sort of, you know, main line.
One torpedo tube. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Yeah. There's a hand up there. Let's try and give you a mic that works. If you could stand up and identify yourself, sir, please.
My name is Malcolm Wilson.
Okay.
Why is it we have observed that a nation's food changes when it goes to another nation? Sometimes it becomes better. For example, I give an example. A lot of people are very fond of Chinese food in Calcutta. But I've spoken to people who say that Chinese food in China is completely different.
Yes.
It is bland and it is insipid. And
Not really.
why over here?
That's an interesting view, but it's not true. Yeah.
I've heard it from people
All right.
who have gone there and who have reported that.
Okay.
Okay? But the taste is completely different. So why is this? Why does this happen? Although Chinese chefs are preparing it in Calcutta also.
Okay, all right. I mean, I'll ask the chef to answer this. But I mean, it also depends on where you go to in China. The food in Sichuan and Hunan can be very spicy. The food in Peking is probably what you would call dull, insipid, and bland. But answer your chef.
Food changing when it changes demography is bound to happen. Even whiskey, which has prepared with the same base material, wine which is made with the same base material, will change in taste and flavor when the demography changes. The chefs might be same, but at the same time, the taste balance.
It's not the war, it's public place. No?
That's what I was coming to. Point number two is what the people want to eat. What is the taste of the city? Just like, but actually, just like tea, the water of Calcutta might be different from water of Delhi, the flavor of tea. The cooking, water is again said in the Vedas. Water is one of the most important things when you are cooking food. So if you don't use the right water, the dish will never taste good.
I just want to agree with Sharad over here. About 40 plus years ago, I was in Chennai and we were broke. We never had any money. And we had very, very simple food. And I came back from Chennai and I looked everywhere in Calcutta for a sambar that tasted like Chennai. The cooks were from Chennai, Prema Vilas, Anand Hotel, etc., etc. We all know these places. It must have been the water or the air, because the cooks were from there. The ingredients were the same, but I just could not find, through the length and breadth of this city, a sambar that tasted like it tastes or tasted in Chennai. So there's another lovely article I read which talks about the simple tomato, in English, tomato, in other languages. And it said, there is no such thing as authenticity. Because the moment you shift and the moment demography changes, climate, water, altitude at which something is grown, is it grown in alluvial soil? Is it grown in a different kind of soil? So these are all factors that make things important, and you cannot duplicate and replicate exactly, no matter how much you try.
Okay, let me ask, any other questions? Anyone? Yes, the hand up there. We will try and get a microphone to you. Identify yourself and tell us what you want.
I am Anya Datta,
Yeah.
and I am a student in Modern Class for Girls, and I am an aspiring pastry chef. All this while we've been talking about how savory cuisine can be taken to another level. And I'd like to ask how Indian sweets can be taken to another different level, because I want to open my own pastry shop in the US. So I need to understand, along with French or American pastries, how can I include Indian desserts? How do I create interesting fusion sweets whose base is an Indian sweet?
Okay, not my cup of tea, but I'm sure Christine will advise you on how to bake French style Indian desserts.
You need to stay in, can you stay for the second session? Because then we're talking only things sweet, okay? So it's all about desserts. Because you've got the two sides of cuisine, you know, the savoury and the sweet, as you said. I mean, on that, I mean, it's, and I think chefs have been doing it, you know, you take the I guess, the essence of the flavour of any of your traditional sweets and then try and, I guess, play with the with those flavours, keeping true to the flavours, but actually introducing a whole lot of new techniques, and it has been happening. It probably hasn't been elevated to the art form that, say, a lot of other Western countries have done with desserts. But I mean, I remember several years ago I was in Jaipur, and a young pastry chef like yourself was experimenting with gulab jamun, and she put them into a traditional cheesecake. So it was, you know, sort of inside the sort of the biscuit base, she put all the gulab jamun, put the cheesecake mix on, and then baked it. And then did one of the sweet sort of rose water type syrups as a sauce over the top. So you can see how that dessert has evolved. It's not traditional. You've taken the traditional concept, but you've started to morph it into something different. So it's up to your own imagination. You're only limited by your imagination. So, and just sort of, staying true to the flavours that you know. I'd probably say with Indian sweets, cut back on the sugar just a little bit. And just experiment with as many different modern techniques that you can possibly see, get your hands on, read about, etc. Because it's the technique that's going to actually change, not the core flavours.
She's going to do more desserts in the next session, so you should stay and watch that. Okay, if there's no, okay, I'll take a last question, all right?
I just like.
You're not allowed to ask the question, you organize it.
However, there's a lot, I just wanted to get your opinion on this, and there are a lot of intangibles. In India, we say half give up. Like, even if you follow a recipe, you're not going to come out the same as exactly with the same ingredients. Now, when I was in America and I put my children there, so then they say, how does it taste like India? So that's another. So I say, but this hand has come from India. So there is something intangible about cooking. And this same recipe and the same ingredients still not produce the same result. So what's your opinion?
The chef's hand, the hand of the cook.
It's all about the passion and how it works. Everything. It's been, I think, being an intuitive cook is what gives you confidence. You can't just read a piece of paper and then automatically translate it. It doesn't happen. There's a disconnect. So you actually have, you have to understand the flavors. You have to build on your taste memories, and you have to trust your own instincts, and that develops confidence. And it's, that's what I love about watching and working with Indian cooks. It's nothing's written down, and that's how I work too. And so you have to formulate something to a recipe into a book, which is very difficult. It's a bit of this, a bit of that, and you taste, and it's like, oh, I need a pinch more of garam masala or whatever, and that's all of a sudden the flavors become alive, and that's what people, I think,
yes, I think that's the final ingredient.
The passion. Well, let's get another chef in here.
Just to add to that, fasting is a very important cultural thing in India. And whenever the ladies fast, they cook a particular dish which is served often to the god. You're not supposed to taste that dish till the time you have offered it to the god. So when you were saying about a recipe being followed and taste and pinch of salt here, pinch of salt there, I don't remember my mother or my grandmother or my wife ever making a dish which has gone wrong on the spices or on the sugar level when they cook after a fast. Never does happen. So what you're saying, it comes from here. The soul of every one of us is different. The recipe might be saying, but the soul of every one of us.
Even a great man like Mr. Diwan must have had the day in his life when he first walked into a kitchen to do something on his own. And that's where I would talk about Christine. She used a phrase which says about, well, approximately race memories. How did it look when my grandmother cooked it? How did it smell? Am I getting it right? So, of course, there is a traditional thing, but there is also a very personal touch to everything you do. And it can't be the same as even your sister or your mother. But the thing about the tradition, how did it look? How did it smell? What was the consistency? These things make a lot of difference, and that's how the character of any cuisine, not only cuisine, of any particular dish can survive.
Okay, there was one person who had a hand up. Do you still have a question, or do we have? You do, yeah? Come ask the question. We give you a microphone. Quickly, how we wrap up?
Yes, sir. A very good evening to everybody present here.
When I say quickly, I mean forget all the hello, how are you?
Okay, sir. So my question is, how can we maintain our traditional food items in this age of globalization? Because everything is changing. So in this way,
Got it. It's a something very close to us. She will answer that.
Everything changes, but things stay the same. You know, so it's not that everything's changing. Yes, there's a lot of shift in a whole lot of things, but we all still hold true to long-held values and, you know, things that we've known from our childhood. And it's really important to keep those memories alive and, you know, to experiment with the new, you know, and I mean, it's going to be interesting, I think, now that we've entered the digital age and we've got a generation of young people who have been brought up only in the digital age, you know, how technology is actually going to change those experiences. And that's another whole topic that we can sort of go on and talk about. But I think, you know, you shouldn't sort of fret too much about the whole globalization thing, because I think, you know, there's still, you know, very strong commitment and fusion. Well, the world is fusion. Fusion means when, as we've talked about already, the influences that have come in. You know, in earlier days of trade, you know, spices have been introduced that weren't, you know, indigenous to this country or other parts of the world. The potato and the chili came from South America. Okay, when it was introduced into and fused into your the food back then, it became fusion. So fusion in itself is actually quite a correct term to use for just about any cuisine in the world now, and particularly in the contemporary sense. But just that it's been often bastardized, as we've talked about, and
another point this means
there's been a collision on a plate that should not happen. You know, it's called a train crash. Then you know, that's what we say, it is confusion, because you haven't understood the fundamentals and the basics of how slavery should actually work.
All right. You can blame Mina because the session over.
On the very sensitive subject of salt.
Salt. Okay.
Why would chefs get insulted if I add salt to my food? I might like it highly seasoned. The chef might think it's perfectly seasoned. Why should I not